The day the Veloxy came to Olympus Station was a day that nobody would ever forget. The station floated in the cold darkness between stars, a place where humans lived and worked far from Earth. It was a big station with homes and shops and parks. Almost 10,000 people called it their home. Ambassador Kira Lawson stood in the docking bay and watched the alien ship connect to the station. She had spent 20 years learning how to talk to aliens. She had met 12 different species in her long career. But the Veloxy were new. Nobody knew much about them. They came from a place called the Andromeda Sector, very far away. They wanted to talk about trade and friendship. The airlock doors opened with a soft hiss. Kira held her breath. The Veloxy were strange and beautiful. They stood almost 8 feet tall. Their bodies looked like they were made of living crystal. Light moved inside them, shifting from blue to purple to white. They did not have faces like humans did. Instead, they had smooth surfaces that glowed when they spoke. Their words came out as musical sounds like bells ringing in a quiet room. There were 5 adult Veloxy. Behind them came 4 smaller ones. These were the cubs, the children of the Veloxy. They were only 3 feet tall, and their bodies glowed with soft blue light. They looked around the station with what seemed like wonder. Kira smiled and stepped forward. She had a small device on her collar that would translate her words into the musical language of the Veloxy. "Welcome to Olympus Station," she said. "We are happy to meet you." The tallest Veloxy made a sound like wind chimes. The translator turned it into words. "We thank you for receiving us. We have traveled far to find friends among the stars." The talks began that day. The adults went to the conference rooms on the upper levels of the station. They sat around big tables and discussed trade routes and cultural exchanges. They talked about sharing knowledge and building trust between their peoples. But while the adults talked, something else was happening in a different part of the station. Commander Lucas Grant was in charge of the station. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. His wife, Dr. Megan Grant, worked as the head of the medical center. They had a daughter named Lily who was 8 years old. Lucas stood on the observation deck and watched the children below. The station had a big recreational dome with grass and trees and a playground. It was the one place on the station that felt like Earth. Children played there every day after their lessons. Today, the human children were not alone. The 4 Veloxy cubs had wandered away from their parents. Nobody knew how. Nobody had seen them leave. But now they stood at the edge of the playground, watching the human children with their glowing bodies pulsing slowly. Lucas felt worry rise in his chest. He reached for his communicator to call security. But then he stopped. A small boy named Danny Harper had walked up to the Veloxy cubs. Danny was 7 years old. He had messy brown hair and a gap in his front teeth. In his hands, he carried a small remote-controlled rover. It was his favorite toy. Danny looked up at the nearest cub. The cub looked down at Danny. Neither of them moved for a long moment. Then Danny held out the rover. "Do you want to play?" he asked. The cub made a soft, chiming sound. It reached out with thin crystal fingers and took the rover. It turned the toy over and over, looking at it from every angle. Then it made another sound, higher this time. It sounded almost like laughter. Lucas watched as more children came forward. Emma Santos, a 6-year-old girl with dark curly hair, offered her building blocks to another cub. The twins, Jake and Lily Porter, showed their handheld gaming device to a third cub. Sophie Clark, who was 9, let the 4th cub hold her stuffed bear. Marcus Webb, a quiet boy of 8, rolled his ball toward the cubs. The Veloxy children accepted every gift with gentle care. They examined each toy closely. They made their musical sounds back and forth to each other, and then they began to play. Lucas felt his worry fade away. He watched the children run and laugh together. The human children showed the cubs how to use the toys. The cubs learned fast, very fast. Within minutes, they were driving the rover and stacking the blocks and bouncing the ball. Megan came to stand beside her husband. She had finished her shift at the medical center. She looked down at the playground and smiled. "Should we stop them?" Lucas asked. Megan shook her head. "Why would we? They are just children playing together. Look how happy they are." She was right. The children looked happy. Human and Veloxy, they ran around the playground as if they had known each other their whole lives. The language barrier did not seem to matter. Children had their own way of talking. Smiles and laughter and shared games needed no translation. The adults thought it was sweet. They thought it was a good sign for the future. Two species meeting for the first time, and already their children were friends. What could be better than that? The diplomatic talks continued for 3 more days. The adults made progress. They agreed on many things. They planned future meetings and exchanges. Everyone was pleased. During those 3 days, the children played together every afternoon. The Veloxy cubs seemed to love the human toys. They carried them everywhere. They even took them back to their ship at night. The human children did not mind. They were happy to share. On the last day, the Veloxy prepared to leave. The adults exchanged formal goodbyes in the docking bay. Ambassador Lawson presented gifts to the Veloxy leaders. The Veloxy gave gifts in return. But the real exchange happened between the children. The Veloxy cubs came to the playground one last time. They found Danny and Emma and Sophie and Marcus and the Porter twins waiting for them. The cubs held out the toys they had borrowed. "Here," the translation device said, turning their chiming words into speech. "We give back your things. Thank you for sharing with us." The human children took their toys back with smiles and waves. They did not notice anything different. They were just happy to have their things returned. The Veloxy ship departed that evening. It glowed bright blue as it pulled away from the station and vanished into the darkness of space. Everyone waved goodbye and went back to their normal lives. Nobody knew what had really happened. Nobody understood that the toys were no longer the same. Nobody realized that the Veloxy cubs had done something to them. Something impossible. Something that would change everything. The truth would come out soon enough. But for now, the children played with their toys, and the adults went about their work, and life on Olympus Station continued as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The cubs had shared their toys. And the Veloxy cubs, in their strange and wonderful way, had said thank you. Dr. Holt Erickson had studied aliens for more than 20 years. He knew about the Gorvan who lived in oceans of liquid metal. He knew about the Trillic who could see through solid walls. He knew about a dozen other species, each one stranger than the last. But he did not know the truth about Veloxy children. Nobody did. The truth was simple but hard to believe. On Earth, babies were born small and helpless. They could not walk or talk or think clearly. They grew slowly over many years. Their brains developed bit by bit. By the time they became adults, they had learned millions of things. But it took a long time, 20 years or more. The Veloxy were different. When a Veloxy cub was born, it already knew everything. Every piece of knowledge that the Veloxy had gathered over thousands of years was already inside its mind. This was because of something called genetic memory. The cubs did not need to learn. They already knew. They knew science and math and engineering. They knew history and art and music. They knew everything their parents knew and their grandparents and their great-grandparents going back 100 generations. The only thing the cubs did not have was experience. They had knowledge but not wisdom. They had facts but not feelings. That was why they needed time to grow. Not to learn things, but to understand what those things meant. A Veloxy cub could build a starship engine. It had the knowledge. But it did not understand why a starship was important. It did not know what it felt like to travel to a new world and see new stars. That understanding came with time. The 4 cubs who had visited Olympus Station were young by Veloxy standards. Only 30 years old. In human terms, they acted like children. They were curious and playful and eager to explore. But their minds were sharper than any human scientist. When the human children shared their toys, the cubs were delighted. The toys were so simple, so basic. But that was what made them interesting. The cubs had never seen anything so primitive. It was like a human child finding a wooden wheel from ancient times. The first night on the station, the cubs took the toys back to their ship. They went to a small room that served as their play space. Their parents thought they were resting. Their parents were wrong. The cub named Thrix held the remote-controlled rover in its crystal hands. It turned the toy over and looked at it closely. The rover had a small motor inside. It had wheels made of rubber. It had a battery that stored power. It had a simple chip that received signals from the controller. Thrix found it charming, like something from a museum. But it was so slow, so limited. The motor wasted most of its energy as heat. The wheels created too much friction. The battery could only hold a tiny amount of power. The chip could only do one thing at a time. Thrix decided to help. The Cub went to the ship's storage room and gathered materials. Metal and crystal and energy cells. Then it went to work. It did not think of what it was doing as difficult. It was just fixing a broken thing, making it better. That was all. First, Thrix removed the old motor. It replaced it with a small device that created its own gravity field. This would let the rover float and move without touching the ground. No more friction. No more wasted energy. Next, Thrix replaced the battery with a power cell that drew energy from the movement of atoms. It would never run out. It would keep the rover running for 1,000 years. Finally, Thrix rebuilt the control chip. The new chip was smaller than a grain of sand, but it could think faster than any computer on Olympus Station. It could learn and adapt. It could make decisions on its own. Thrix finished its work and looked at the rover. It looked the same on the outside. Danny would not notice any difference, but inside it was completely new. The other Cubs did the same with their toys. Ven worked on Emma's building blocks. The blocks were just pieces of colored plastic that fit together. Simple and boring. Ven changed them at the molecular level. Now the blocks could reshape themselves. They could become anything the user imagined. They could grow or shrink or change color. They could connect without touching. All the user had to do was think about what they wanted. The Cub named Prill worked on the handheld gaming device. The device was a rectangle of plastic with a small screen. It could play simple games with bright colors and silly sounds. Prill found it amusing. But the screen was so small, the games were so limited. Prill rebuilt the device from the inside out. The new screen could project images in 3 dimensions. The games could now respond to the thoughts of the player. The processing power was increased by a factor of 10 million. The device could now run programs more complex than anything humans had ever created. The 4th Cub, Crex, worked on 2 items: the stuffed bear that belonged to Sophie and the ball that belonged to Marcus. The bear was soft and brown with button eyes. It was just a toy for hugging. Crex thought about what would make it better. A toy for hugging should make the owner feel safe and healthy. So Crex added tiny machines inside the stuffing. These machines could scan the body of anyone who held the bear. They could find sickness and injury. They could even fix some problems on their own. The ball was round and red. It was for throwing and catching. Crex decided to make it more interesting. The new ball could create invisible walls of force around itself. It could float in the air. It could bounce off nothing at all. It could even protect the person holding it from harm. The Cubs worked through the night. They did not get tired. They did not need to sleep as much as human children did. When morning came, they had finished all their projects. They were pleased with their work. They had taken broken things and made them better. The human children would be so happy. The Cubs did not understand that they had done something impossible. To them, the changes were simple, basic. Any Veloxy Cub could do the same. They did not realize that humans could not do these things. They did not know that human children were different from Veloxy children. On the day the Veloxy ship left the station, the Cubs returned the toys to their human friends. They felt proud. They had made good gifts. They had said thank you in the best way they knew. Danny took his rover and smiled. Emma took her blocks and laughed. Sophie hugged her bear. Marcus caught his ball. The Porter twins grabbed their gaming device and immediately started to play. The Cubs waved goodbye with their thin crystal arms. The humans waved back. And then the Veloxy were gone, flying away into the darkness of space. They did not look back. They did not see what happened next. They did not see Danny turn on his rover and watch it float into the air. They did not see Emma's blocks begin to glow. They did not see the bear's button eyes blink with a soft inner light. They did not see the ball hover above Marcus's open hand. They did not see the gaming device project a hologram that filled half the room. The Cubs had given gifts. Simple thank you gifts from children to children. But those gifts were about to change everything. Chief Engineer Paula Vance was having a normal day. She was walking through the residential area of the station, checking on the air systems and power lines. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. She had a cup of coffee in one hand and a tablet in the other. Then she saw something that made her stop. A small boy was standing in the middle of the hallway. It was Danny Harper, the 7-year-old with messy brown hair. He was playing with his toy rover, but the rover was not rolling on the ground like it should. The rover was floating. Paula blinked. She rubbed her eyes. The rover was still floating. It hung in the air about 3 inches above the floor. It moved forward and backward and side to side without ever touching anything. It made no sound at all. Paula set down her coffee and walked closer. "Danny," she said carefully, "what is your rover doing?" Danny looked up at her and smiled. "Thrix fixed it for me. He said it was too slow before. Now it can fly." "Thrix? The Veloxy Cub?" "Yeah, he is my friend. He made my rover better." Paula knelt down and looked at the floating toy. It looked the same as any cheap rover from a toy shop. Red plastic body, black wheels, a small antenna on top. But it was floating. It was impossible, but it was floating. "Danny, can I borrow your rover for a little while? I want to look at it." Danny's face fell. "But I want to play with it." "I know. I will give it back, I promise. I just need to see how it works." Danny thought about it. Then he nodded. "Okay, but be careful. Thrix worked really hard on it." Paula took the rover and hurried to her lab. Her heart was beating fast. She did not know what she was holding, but she knew it was important. The lab was a big room full of machines and tools. Paula set the rover on a scanning table and turned on the sensors. Numbers and images filled the screens around her. She read them once, then she read them again. Then she sat down hard in her chair. This was impossible. The rover had a power source that should not exist. It was pulling energy from the very atoms around it. It would never run out of power. Never. It could run for 1,000 years and still keep going. The propulsion system was even more amazing. The rover was creating its own tiny gravity field. It was pushing against the fabric of space itself to move. No wheels needed, no friction, no limits. The control chip was the size of a grain of sand, but it was more powerful than the main computer that ran the entire station. It could think for itself. It could learn and adapt. It was almost alive. Paula called an emergency meeting. An hour later, she stood in the main conference room with Commander Lucas Grant, Dr. Megan Grant, and Security Chief Ray Delgado. They all looked confused. Paula did not blame them. "This is what I found," Paula said. She put her results on the big screen. "This is a toy rover, a simple toy for children, but it has been changed. Someone rebuilt it at the atomic level." Commander Grant leaned forward. "Changed how?" "The power source breaks every law of physics we know. The propulsion system creates artificial gravity. The computer chip is more advanced than anything on this station. More advanced than anything on Earth." "That is not possible," Ray said. "The Veloxy were only here for 3 days. They did not have time to do this." "The adult Veloxy did not do it," Megan said slowly. Everyone looked at her. "The children did." Danny said his friend Thrix fixed his rover. Thrix was one of the Cubs. The room went quiet. "You are saying," Lucas said carefully, "that a Veloxy child did this." "A child?" "I think so," Megan said. "But that is not all. My daughter Lily told me something this morning. She said Emma's building blocks are glowing now. She said they move by themselves." Paula felt cold. There were other toys. The Cubs had other toys. Ray pulled out his communicator. "All security teams, this is Chief Delgado. Find the following children immediately: Emma Santos, Sophie Clark, Marcus Webb, Jake, and Lily Porter. Bring them and any toys they received from the Veloxy to the main conference room. Now." 15 minutes later, the children were gathered in the conference room. They looked nervous. They did not understand why the adults seemed so worried. Emma held her building blocks. They were simple plastic shapes. Or they had been. Now they glowed softly at the edges with a blue light. As the adults watched, one block floated off the table and attached itself to another block without being touched. Sophie had her stuffed bear in her arms. The bear looked normal at first. Then its button eyes blinked. Actually blinked. A soft humming sound came from inside it. Marcus held his ball. It was red and round and ordinary looking. But when he let go of it, it did not fall. It floated beside him, waiting. The Porter twins set their gaming device on the table. The screen lit up, and suddenly a three-dimensional image filled the air above it. A colorful game world hung in empty space, complete with tiny moving characters. Paula scanned each item. The results were the same every time. Impossible technology, centuries of advancement packed into simple toys. The bear has medical equipment inside it, Paula reported. Tiny machines that can scan and treat injuries. The ball creates force fields. The blocks are programmable matter. The gaming device has more computing power than our entire station network. This is insane, Ray said. Why would they do this? Is it a weapon? A trap? I do not think so, Megan said. She was looking at the children. Look at them. They are not scared. They are not hurt. They think their friends just fixed their toys. Fixed them? Ray almost shouted. They turned a stuffed bear into a medical lab. They turned a ball into a shield generator. This is not fixing. Commander Grant held up his hand for silence. He looked at Danny. Danny, when Thrix gave you back your rover, what did he say? Danny thought about it. He said thank you for letting him play with it. He said he made it better because he wanted to be a good friend. Did he say anything else? He said human toys are funny. He said they are simple but nice. He wanted to make mine work better so I would have more fun. Lucas looked at his wife. Understanding passed between them. They did not know, Megan said softly. The Cubs did not know they were doing anything special. They thought they were just being helpful. Like a human child drawing a picture to say thank you. But they are not human children, Paula said. What are they? Nobody had an answer. On the table, Emma's blocks continued to glow. Sophie's bear hummed quietly. Marcus's ball floated in the air. The gaming device showed worlds within worlds, complex beyond understanding. 5 children sat in a conference room, holding toys that contained the secrets of the universe. And somewhere far away, 4 Veloxy Cubs traveled home, never knowing what they had done. They had said thank you. They had changed everything. The news traveled fast. Within 1 day, everyone on Olympus Station knew about the toys. Within 1 week, everyone on Earth knew. Within 1 month, every human in the galaxy had heard the story. The story was simple. Alien children had turned ordinary toys into super advanced technology. Nobody knew how, nobody knew why, but everyone wanted to know more. Admiral Catherine Cole was the leader of the United Earth Space Fleet. She was a small woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes. She had fought in 3 wars and won them all. She was not easily surprised. But when she read the reports from Olympus Station, even she was shocked. Get me the Veloxy, she ordered. I want to talk to them now. It took 2 weeks to contact the Veloxy ship. It took another week for them to return to human space. When they finally arrived at Earth Station 1, the largest meeting room was ready for them. Admiral Cole sat at one end of a long table. Ambassador Kira Lawson sat beside her. 30 other officials filled the remaining seats. Guards stood at every door. The Veloxy High Resonance entered the room with 2 other adult Veloxy. The crystal beings seemed calm. They did not understand why the humans looked so serious. Thank you for coming, Admiral Cole said through the translator. We have questions about what happened on Olympus Station. Of course, the High Resonance replied. Musical sounds became words. We are happy to help. What do you wish to know? Admiral Cole pushed a tablet across the table. It showed images of the toys, the floating rover, the glowing blocks, the blinking bear, the hovering ball, the holographic game. Your children did this, the Admiral said. They changed our children's toys. We want to know why. The High Resonance looked at the images. Its body flickered with colors. Ah, yes, the little ones mentioned this. They said your children were very kind. They shared their playthings. Our Cubs wanted to say thank you. Thank you? Admiral Cole leaned forward. They turned a toy rover into a gravity-defying machine. They put a medical lab inside a stuffed animal. They created force field technology from a rubber ball. This is not saying thank you. This is giving us centuries of advanced science. The high resonance was quiet for a moment. Then it made a sound that the translator could not quite catch. It might have been confusion. It might have been amusement. I do not understand the problem, the Veloxi said. Your young ones gave gifts. Our young ones gave gifts in return. Is this not how friendship works? Your children are capable of this level of engineering? Admiral Cole asked. Of course. All Veloxi cubs know these things. They are born with this knowledge. It is passed down through our genes. Every cub knows what every Veloxi before them has learned. The room went very quiet. They are born knowing? Ambassador Lawson asked. They do not have to learn. They do not learn facts and skills, no. They learn feelings and wisdom. They learn what it means to be Veloxi. But the knowledge is already there. A cub of 30 years knows everything an elder of 3,000 years knows. They simply do not yet understand all of it. Admiral Cole sat back in her chair. She had commanded fleets. She had negotiated with a dozen alien species. But this was beyond anything she had imagined. Let me make sure I understand, she said slowly. Your children, your cubs, have the full knowledge of your entire species. They can build machines that we cannot even dream of. And they thought this was a normal gift? It is normal for us, the high resonance said. Your children gave simple toys. Our children made them better. They meant only kindness. Did they do something wrong? No, Admiral Cole said quietly. No, they did nothing wrong. They just surprised us very much. The Veloxi seemed relieved. We are glad. We do not wish to cause problems. We came seeking friendship, not trouble. You have not caused trouble, Ambassador Lawson said. She smiled, though her eyes were still wide with shock. You have given us a gift. A very big gift. The talks continued for many hours. The Veloxi explained more about their cubs and their society. The humans asked hundreds of questions. By the end, both sides understood each other a little better. The Veloxi had not meant to change human history. They had just been polite. Their children had just been friendly. It was the simplest thing in the universe. And it had changed everything. Back on Olympus Station, life went on. But nothing was the same. Danny Harper still played with his rover. But now, teams of scientists followed him everywhere, taking notes and recording data. They watched the rover float and zoom through the corridors. They scanned it with every instrument they had. They still did not understand how it worked. Emma Santos built towers with her blocks. The blocks grew and changed and glowed with inner light. She made castles that shifted like dreams. She made bridges that connected nothing to nothing. The scientists watched and wondered. Sophie Clark hugged her bear and told people when they were sick. Mrs. Chen has a cold starting, she would say. Mr. Davis has a sore back. She was always right. The bear knew. The bear saw things that human doctors could not see. Marcus Webb bounced his ball off walls of invisible force. He learned to make shields appear from thin air. He could stop a thrown object in mid-flight. He could create bubbles of protection around himself and others. The Porter twins played their games. But now their games taught them things. Complex math, quantum physics, chemistry and biology and engineering. They learned without knowing they were learning. They grew smarter every day. The children did not think of themselves as special. They were just playing. They were just having fun with their toys. They did not understand why the adults watched them with such strange looks on their faces. But the adults understood. They understood that these children held the keys to the future. The toys contained knowledge that could take humanity forward by hundreds of years. Gravity control, unlimited energy, programmable matter, medical technology that could cure almost anything, force fields that could protect against any weapon, computing power beyond imagination, all of it, in the hands of children. Some people were scared. They said the toys should be locked away. They said it was too dangerous to let children play with such things. But Commander Grant said no. These toys belonged to the children. The Veloxi had given them as gifts, as signs of friendship. Taking them away would be wrong. It would also be foolish. The children were learning to use the toys. They were understanding them in ways that adults could not. Danny knew his rover better than any engineer. Emma felt her blocks like they were part of her body. Sophie trusted her bear completely. Marcus and his ball worked together like one being. The twins and their game had become inseparable. If anyone was going to unlock the secrets of Veloxy technology, it would be these children. So the adults did something very hard. They stepped back. They let the children play. They watched and waited and hoped. And somewhere in the depths of space, the Veloxy High Resonance sent a message back to its homeworld. The humans are interesting, the message said. Their children are kind. They share what they have, even with strangers. And when our cubs shared in return, the humans did not become angry or afraid. They became curious. They became hopeful. The humans may be ready, the message ended. The humans may be friends worth keeping. The cubs had shared their toys. The toys had been enhanced. And now, two species, so different from each other, had taken the first steps towards something wonderful. The future was coming. And it started with children playing together. 5 years passed. The galaxy changed. Engineer Paula Vance stood on the deck of a new kind of ship. It was called the Horizon, and it was the first human vessel to use gravity drive technology. The same technology that had once made a toy rover float was now pushing a ship through space faster than anything humans had built before. Paula remembered the day she had first seen that rover floating in the hallway. She remembered thinking it was impossible. Now she commanded a team of 3,000 scientists, all working to understand and copy the gifts the Veloxy Cubs had given. Progress had been slow at first. The technology was so advanced that human scientists could barely understand it. But they kept trying. They kept learning. And little by little, they began to figure things out. The gravity drive had been the first breakthrough. It had taken 2 years to understand how Danny's rover moved. It had taken another year to build a larger version. Now every new ship in the fleet used the same technology. The power cells had come next. Unlimited energy drawn from the motion of atoms. No fuel needed. No waste produced. The cells now powered cities on a dozen worlds. The old ways of making energy were almost forgotten. The medical technology had saved millions of lives. Sophie's bear had been studied by thousands of doctors. They had learned to build their own tiny healing machines. Diseases that had once killed people were now easily cured. Injuries that would have meant death were fixed in hours. The force field generators had changed war forever. Marcus's ball had shown the way. Now soldiers wore small devices that could create shields around them. Ships had barriers that could stop weapons fire. The technology had ended more than one conflict before it could begin. The computing advances had touched everything. The chip from Danny's rover and the processors from the twins' gaming device had shown what was possible. New computers thought faster and learned better. They helped solve problems that had confused humans for centuries. And the programmable matter from Emma's blocks had opened doors to things nobody had imagined. Buildings that could reshape themselves. Tools that changed to fit any task. Materials that healed when damaged. All of this had come from toys. Simple toys that children had shared with strange friends from another world. Danny Harper was 12 years old now. He had finished the basic school courses 2 years early. He spent most of his time in the engineering labs, working alongside adults who respected him. He still had his rover. He had never let anyone take it apart. But he had learned enough to understand how it worked. He was already designing his own versions. Emma Santos was 11. She had a gift for materials science that amazed her teachers. She could feel the structure of matter in a way that others could not. Her blocks had taught her well. She was already helping to design new kinds of programmable matter. Sophie Clark was 14. She worked part-time at the medical center, the same one where Dr. Megan Grant had once been the only doctor. Sophie could not explain how she knew things about sick people. She just knew. The bear had taught her to listen to bodies in a way that machines could not copy. Marcus Webb was 13. He had joined a special program that trained young people in defensive technology. His ball still floated beside him wherever he went. He could create force fields with a thought now. He was teaching others to do the same. The Porter twins, Jake and Lily, were 12. They were the youngest students ever accepted into the Advanced Computing Institute. Their minds worked differently than other people's minds. They saw patterns where others saw chaos. They solved problems that had stumped experts for years. The children had grown. But they were still children. They still laughed and played and got in trouble sometimes. They still had best friends and worst enemies and favorite foods. They just happened to be changing the world while they grew up. The Veloxi had become close partners with humanity. Trade flowed between the two species. Veloxi ships visited human worlds. Human ships visited Veloxi worlds. The fear that some had felt in the beginning had faded away. The exchange programs had been the best idea. Human children now visited Veloxi cubs on their home world. They played together and learned from each other. The human children could not match the knowledge of the cubs, but they brought something the cubs did not have: creativity, imagination, the ability to see old things in new ways. The Veloxi valued this greatly. Their cubs knew everything their species had learned, but they sometimes had trouble thinking of new things. Human children were full of new ideas, wild ideas, impossible ideas, ideas that sometimes turned out to be possible after all. It was a good trade. Knowledge for creativity. Facts for dreams. Commander Lucas Grant stood on the observation deck of the new station humanity was building. It was 10 times larger than Olympus Station. It used materials and methods that had come from Emma's blocks. It would be the center of human exploration for centuries to come. His wife Megan stood beside him. Their daughter Lily was somewhere on the station, probably causing trouble with her friends. She was 13 now and just as wild as ever. "Do you remember," Megan said, "when the cubs gave back those toys? You asked me if we should stop them." Lucas nodded. "You said they were just children playing together." I had no idea how right I was, or how wrong. They were playing together. They still are. Megan smiled. And look what happened because of it. Outside the window, construction drones moved in perfect patterns. Ships came and went, their gravity drives glowing blue. In the distance, stars waited to be explored. New worlds waited to be found. All of this because some children had shared their toys. All of this because some cubs had said thank you. Lucas thought about the future. He thought about what humanity might become. Partners with the Veloxi, explorers of the galaxy, builders of wonders. "The universe is strange," he said. "Strange and wonderful." And sometimes, Megan added, the biggest changes come from the smallest people. Somewhere in the station, children laughed. Human children and Veloxi cubs playing together, sharing new toys that might one day reshape everything all over again. The adults let them play. They had learned what could happen when the cubs shared their toys. They could not wait to see what would happen next. The story was not over. It was just beginning. The first chapter had been written by children who did not know they were writing history. The next chapters would be written by the children who came after them. And somewhere in the endless dark between stars, more species waited, more friends waited, more toys waited to be shared. The universe was very big, but it felt a little smaller now, a little friendlier, a little more like home. All because of children, all because of toys, all because someone had decided to share.